You want to play a new game?
Yeah, I love new games.
Right.
So, yeah.
We're going to call this one Wordy Wednesday on the Podcast Daily.
Okay.
Not Wordy Wednesday.
Wordy.
Every Wednesday is Award Wednesday on the Podcast
That's
Daily.
right.
He's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just randomly pick some topics out of thin air. And then you are going to describe with 1 or 2 words the first thing that comes to your mind about it.
Okay.
I think they've done it on PTI for like 30 years, but I haven't watched ESPN
I haven't
in that
watched
long.
ESPN. That's not a game in 15
I don't
years.
I don't know if that's still on, but they used to do that like 20 years ago. So it's sort of like fill in the blanks, but not really. We're just going to describe it.
All right.
The running back coaching search. No, we won't start there.
Okay.
The quarterback battle.
Interesting. Which is like, I know kind of a lame word to use, but I wouldn't have used it coming into the season, right? Because it seemed pretty cut and dry where it was going to end up. And it's probably still going to end up with Will Howard being this team's starting quarterback. But, you know, Devin Brown in the little bit of practice we watched is like throwing it okay. Will Howard, and we haven't watched anything this week, so Will Howard could be awesome this week, and we wouldn't have a tremendous vibe for that. I heard, you hear some things, but I'm looking pretty good on the scrimmage on Saturday. But what we've seen with our own 2 eyes is like Will Howard getting his feet under him early, which just like kind of opens the door for your mind to wander a little bit, which I didn't think is a position we'd be in. And then you hear like Julian Sayin is playing pretty well for a true freshman, probably because he's like a fake true freshman. I don't know, he's in a very weird situation. And like, Lincoln Keenholz is a super athletic kid that you like a lot. So it is. Yeah, and I don't know a better word for it than interesting, because it does. I would have like said coming into spring ball that there was like 100% chance, no doubt about it, Will Howard is going to be the team starting quarterback in the fall. And like I'm pretty close to 100% still, but I'm not all the way there, which is like I don't know. Even if I'm 97%, I think that's still, vastly different from where I thought I'd be. Yeah,
I think I would have to call it competitive.
Yeah,
and not combative. It's more like it feels like anyway right now, a sibling rivalry. We go through this so much. It's like, how do you get along? What's this? Like the 3 of them together on Tuesday after practice, we're out throwing footballs, some to coaches, some to tight ends for at least half an hour. And it wasn't like one guy's over on this side doing it by himself and trying to get better. Like they were taking turns, rotating all 3 together. I think that is a good sign that there is cohesiveness to that competition as well. It's good natured, it's spirited, and they all seem to get along well. Now, that's easy to do until decisions are made, I guess. We'll see if that stays through the next month for those 3 guys, but at this point, that's where it's at. I think that's a good sign, and they're all putting in extra work, and you can see they desperately want it. Like Lincoln Keenholz, Devin Brown, and Will Howard I'm talking about. The Julian Sayin thing is a separate conversation.
Yes.
That's down the road, but those 3 guys are really pushing each other. That's what I think Ryan Day would ideally want. I mean, that's ideal for a quarterback competition.
I think so, because like if there were animosity in there, I think it'd be natural. I don't know that you could blame anybody for it, but I think it would also be distracting. Like what you want is like a competitive of an environment as possible, but making sure everyone's in the right headspace to like learn the things they need to learn, grow the way they need to grow. And that does kind of seem like where they're at right now, which is like, it's never a guarantee when you have a quarterback room that's as loaded as Ohio State's is, but I guess it helps that Ohio State has plenty of experience doing this thing because they do it like every other year.
They do. They have a lot of reps at that. Okay. Right tackle.
Right tackle, I would say, is confusing for me a little bit for reasons that I touched on earlier in the week. I won't necessarily repeat myself. Again, I think a lot of my answers to this are going to be like things I thought coming into the spring that I was wrong about.
Well, new information.
Yeah, I just really believed that it was going to be like a wide open competition, and I don't say that because like the fact that it doesn't feel like that way means that it's going to be a disaster come the fall. Like they could still get to where they need to get to and get the right answers, even if it's not a wide open competition. But I honestly kind of thought like, and it's different because like, of course, like Donovan Jackson's going to be the team starting left guard, but I don't know that anyone last year played so well that like this spring could have been like everyone's getting a shot.
Yeah.
And like you would hope that the right guys respond to that. But even if they didn't want to make it that drastic, I still thought the right side and the right tackle in particular would be that way, and it's not. And maybe that's just because that like Josh Fryer's made a huge jump, and I'm eager to talk to him. I'm hopeful we get to do that this week, and if not this week, next week. I'm eager to talk to Justin Fry, who we do talk to next week, about where Josh Fryer is, because I do, as I've said before, like I want to allow for the possibility that he has gotten better, that he is in a much better space mentally, that he did learn from some of the struggles he had at the end of last year. Like, you know, plenty of players do that. Why would he be any different? But it just feels like there was so much urgency about making sure that whole line was right going into this year with everything else they have on offense. And it's not to say that urgency doesn't exist, but it hasn't manifested itself in the form of like wide open competition, which I thought it might. So I found that confusing.
I feel like it's stabilizing more than I thought it would be at this point. And I don't even mean that has to be Josh Fryer, though it might well be. Like, if Ohio State was truly concerned about the right side of the offensive line, I think we would have already seen more movement in the offseason or potentially heard about that happening given,
that's a good point.
Given what's going on into April. So I don't think that it's impossible that Luke Montgomery and Josh Fryer could still switch in the next 9 or 10 practices. It could. I really don't know if that's the confusing part that you talked about, but if there was a great deal of concern about that, I think that would have already emerged. Now we'll get a better feel for that perhaps on Saturday or definitely on Saturday, but like it doesn't feel like Ohio State has a much concern level about what's going on up front right now.
No, it just kind of, it almost feels like they've returned off. I know they haven't returned all 5 starters, but like the vibe is that they've returned all 5 starters and that they were good and they're going to be good again this year. And it's like, okay, and I don't think they would do that if that were not the case. So maybe that should be encouraging, but it's just the vibe is different than I expected it to be, which I guess is a good thing. It's okay that I was wrong about my anticipation of the vibes, I suppose.
Jeremiah Smith's black stripe removal.
Could I use 2 words?
Yes, of course you can.
Rocket ship. The rocket ship's 2 words, right? It's crazy, man. Like, I mean, I've been covering Ohio State, so I think this is my 11th season covering Ohio State. And there have been plenty of really good players come through here, like really, really good players come through here and do a lot of crazy things when they were young. And like, I haven't even seen Jeremiah Smith do anything. It's just what I know about him as a prospect and what people say about him. And it just feels very different.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. Like I am someone who I think like you does try to temper my expectations about true freshmen. And I've grown in that way over the years of covering this team, because early on, I probably would have said Jeremiah Smith's going to have 2,000 receiving yards this year if you asked me this question 6 years ago. But he's making it hard to not say that. Like it's difficult to not get, it doesn't even feel like you're getting carried away. It's just like, yeah, that's who he is. So like when Denzel Burke is saying it and like, you know, Emeka Ibuka is saying it and the quarterbacks are saying it and coaches are saying it, it's like I can't help but jump on the bandwagon with them. So it does feel like we are gearing up for something special, like a level of stardom perhaps that is even uncommon at a place like this.
Yeah, I think it's bonkers. I mean, I've talked about it a couple of times. Like, it's one thing for fans, media, people outside the Woody to be exuberant about someone with his recruiting profile. When the program itself leans fully into that hype is very rare. Mm-hmm. And I think that portends something pretty scary and remarkable. And that's another thing, like Saturday, because the 2 open periods that we saw, I saw him make an insane catch on air that I didn't think.
Oh, he did make, that catch was the one on the shoe tops.
Yeah. But now, like, what's that going to look like in a scrimmage setting? Like, what is he able to do? Did we see him matched up against somebody like Denzel Burke or Davison Igbinosun? And what happens to those matchups? Like, whatever happens in it, I think people will be making a big deal out of it, especially if he wins them. So we'll see what transpires there. But that's certainly another key part of that on Saturday.
I will. Yeah, it's going to be hard to focus on other things, I think, when he's on the field. I'm going to try really, really intently to not just watch him on every single play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're trying to work on the passing game, you're just going to have to look at those.
Yeah, I guess
those guys on the perimeter.
That's true.
Being asked about Caleb Downs rumors.
Oh, foolishness! Like, come on, man. Like, I just don't like the problem is like I don't want to go on a diatribe about.
I want you to
Twitter and people who are now able to present themselves as people who have actual information about things, but don't fall for it. Like, use a little bit of common sense. I would beg you. And I get it. Like, you know, college football is crazy. I suppose you can't write anything off like now when players can do whatever the hell they want. But that idea is ludicrous to me that he would go to Michigan or go back to Alabama. At least the going back to Alabama thing, like, makes 0.5% of sense to like jump to when you see Caden Proctor do it. But like, come on, man, going to Michigan, get out of here.
But like, why would Alabama suddenly be more appealing to him than it was 2 months ago when he was like intent from the start, like this isn't going to be a fit. His position coach goes to Georgia. He had a long-term, you know, Ohio State was number 2 in that recruitment. Like, Caleb Downs seemed to always want there to be proof of concept for the Buckeyes, and now they have it.
Yep.
And he's here and doesn't seem to be showing any signs of discontent. And pretty much every time we hear from the coaching staff, it's like, I think Caleb Downs is pretty good. And
got his black stripe off.
Seemed to be pretty happy around here.
Yeah,
that's a big achievement.
It happened
for an All-American.
For an All-American, yeah. It's I get it. It's a thing. Urban Meyer brought it here. You got to earn your stripes. Like I quite literally, I understand that. Like, we don't have to give Caleb Downs a black stripe. Like, we can.
It's better without it.
It's better. He was an All-American last year. What are we doing? But he lost it after Tuesday's practice. Walking off the field, he was carrying a stripe in his hand. So I think maybe he just ripped it off because he was tired of it.
If you're not going to do it, I'm doing it. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. So no, he's another guy who the buzz is not quite as palpable, I guess, as it is with Jeremiah Smith. I think mostly because like we have games of Caleb Downs to watch and just sort of know we don't have to talk about it as much. But he is going to be a star here for the next 2 years. Like anytime a guy is like in the conversation for best at his position, it's obviously worth paying attention to, and he's definitely in that conversation going into his sophomore year.
Okay, let me see here. Sonny Styles as a linebacker. You would describe that how?
Like natural, just makes sense, I think. Especially talking with Sonny about it the other day. Like, it was interesting to me that he kind of, and not to what extent I'm not sure, but he said even as he was a safety last year, he went out on his own to like learn a little bit about the linebacker position. Not that anyone was teaching him the position necessarily, or that he was like doing a deep dive on it, but I think just trying to pay a little bit more attention to what that position is asked to do on a specific call, because he figured he would one day soon be asked to do it, and that day is now. And you just like look at him, man. He's 6'5", 235 pounds. He's bigger than Steel Chambers, like twice the size of Steel Chambers. He's 4 pounds lighter than I think Tommy Eichenberg played at last year, but he's also like 4 inches taller than Tommy Eichenberg. Like, yeah, he just looks like a linebacker, and it's not. One of the things that I have tried to be cognizant of, like during this conversation about Sonny Styles as a linebacker, is not that like he can't play safety, because he definitely can. It's just that on this team, it makes sense for him to play linebacker because of the guy we were just talking about, Caleb Downs, and Lathan Ransom came back, and he said that as well. Like, Downs got here, and I had to figure out where I could help this team the most, and that position is at linebacker. So I think a lot of things synced up to get him to what is maybe his natural position, but he can do anything. So I like it. I think it makes sense, and it seems to be natural for him.
Yeah, he still didn't smile that much.
He's all business, that guy.
But he seems to really be enjoying life there.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the first one. Let's put a word on it. The running back coaching search as it hits the 2-week mark here.
Messy, I think. And not even messy because like Ohio State's doing stuff wrong. I think just messy because of the timing.
Yep.
And this search has probably not been as smooth as Ryan Day had hoped because of that. And I don't have much of a vibe for where it's going to go. Very clearly, they're at the point where they've probably swung at 4 or 5 guys, and they're not going to get any of them, which is never a situation that you want to be in. But I mean, they'll have a running backs coach, and I think it'll still be a good one. But it is unfortunate that they were kind of put in a tough position trying to find one at this time of year, and maybe at the time that it happened, we didn't give enough deference to the difficulty that would come with that. Because at Ohio State, you can just assume like, oh, they'll figure it out. It's been challenging, I think for them, more so than they thought it would be.
That's a lot of words to describe it. I think the unfortunate one and misfortune is probably the best way to look at it. Like, would this have happened in January? Probably not. I mean, the situation, the dynamic for all those people. They didn't have new contracts. Like even somebody like Marquell Blackwell was looking for other jobs, and then he took one, and like, you just signed a new contract. There's going to be provisions in it that might make, I'm not saying he was the top candidate or the fifth candidate. He was probably in that B or C tier, but even somebody like that it's not a natural deal to complete, like, is a reminder of the challenge of doing this in March. So the timing that Tony Alford left Ryan Day with is the worst, I think, that you could have.
It definitely is.
Because there aren't programs that are in need of doing this in August. So I don't really think that's ever happened. And you don't generally see it in March either. All this stuff is done. That's the way that the coaching carousel spins, and then it stops, and the season has essentially begun at this point. So that part is weird. It's reached the point that I find it a little bit silly, because I understand the impulse to say it should be over. It's Ohio State and Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins and a total salary pool of like $1.6 million to work with. Like, this should be easy, but unfortunately it's not, because it's the middle of March and because contracts exist for coaches still, not for players.
You could do the thing that Nike did with Michael Jordan, right? And just take all the allocated money and give it to one guy, but you can take all the allocated money and put it in 1 year, and then just offer somebody $1.5 million to be your running backs coach for 1 year.
I'm not sure that anybody really wants that for a variety of reasons, but all right, I don't know. Do you have one for me?
For you?
Yeah.
Wordy.
I don't know. Silly concept. Dumb. I don't know. We want to find some other things to provide, so we're not just standing here saying the same things over and over. So I tried my best. You can let us know if you liked it, didn't like it.
I liked it.
We'll come up with something else if we need to, or we'll bring it back, and I'll find an easier way to maybe say it than wordy.
I'll try to expand my vocabulary too, maybe. Not just say different versions.
It's a test. It's a test for us to expand our horizons and vocabulary as well. So thanks for bearing with us on a Wednesday edition of the Podcast Daily. A lot more, again, coming throughout the week. We'll come up with something for Thursday morning that might be alliteration, might not be. Who knows? We'll figure that out when we get there. Thanks for joining us for this episode, though. It's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. So long.